Hello, everyone. So I want to take some time this afternoon to share my testimony with you all, which I think if you had told me 6 months or a year ago that I was going to share my testimony with everyone I knew, like even especially on social media, I think I would have told you that you were crazy because it's just something I've kept to myself for so long. Um, but I really felt the Holy Spirit convict me lately that it's important to put your testimony out there, to share that. And then that's where God's power is in your life. And that even though there are those painful moments, those parts I'm not proud of, that those are the moments that God's power is most evident in my life, and that you can see Him shine through in those moments. And what was really holding me back, I think, was that I was seeing it as my pain and my vulnerabilities instead of that I didn't want to put out there, instead of the opportunities for God to show through, use my life to show through to other people's lives. Um, and I just think that's something that's really undervalued, and that we tend to live so much with like a mask of perfection on, and it's important to take that off and really show those parts of our lives that aren't pretty, because we all have those parts of our lives. Um, yeah, and I think God has really showed me that if sharing this brings one person closer to Him, or brings one person to Him, then that's completely worth it. And that I shouldn't be selfish enough to say that my comfort is more important than that. Um, yeah, so I think just kind of starting out at the beginning, I was born in Fredericksburg. My mom was a teacher, still is, and my dad worked on the family farm and was a plumber. So my dad grew up Methodist, and my mom grew up largely without any sort of religion in her life. She went to church with some of her family members off and on, but that was kind of the religious basis of my life, of like not a very strong one. And my first experience with religion, but not with God, which I think is an important distinction to make, was when I was dedicated at the age of 9 months old. So dedication is kind of sort of like christening in a way. And my mom and my grandmother took me to the church in Fredericksburg and got me dedicated. My dad didn't want anything to do with it and didn't want that to happen. Actually tried to forbid that from happening. And we went to that church for another about year and a half. And then at the age of 2, when I was 2, my mom and dad ended up getting divorced. My mom and I moved around a little bit with my grandparents. They had a house up in Alexandria and one down in Lake Anna. And then we ended up moving to Louisa, the house we live in now. And I don't think like that their divorce really had that big of an impact on me at the time, because I was so young that I hadn't really like formed my worldview yet. But throughout my relationship with my dad, he was very like emotionally distant, always repressed his emotions, and wouldn't really let me express my emotions and express who I was when I was with him. Like I felt like I had to be another person and like be the person he wanted me to be instead of be the person that I was. And really, now that I see it now, wouldn't let me be the person that God wanted me to be. Which was really hard to do, just because it's just so difficult to not be who you really are and to have to live up to someone else's expectations. And he never really supported me like in my hobbies or my interests. I was kind of just the farmhand who like worked with him. And we never really like connected emotionally. Which was really hard, that like this is a person who I want to love, who I'm supposed to love because he's my dad, but he doesn't want to love me, if that makes sense. And yeah, I think, and another thing was like he would never come support me to like when I played like in soccer games or like play basketball, things like that. Didn't come to like school awards. Never really made an effort to be a part of my life, which I think a big part of relationships is effort and investing into them. And on top of that, shortly before my mom divorced him, he converted to Islam. So he was Muslim. And it was really hard. Basically, I lived with my mom during the week, and then every other weekend I would get with him, and 2 weeks in the summer. So it was really hard to live in a very strong Christian household, because my mom had grown her faith, grown closer to God. it was hard to live in that environment, and then on the weekends have to go into a completely different environment and into a religion that I didn't agree with, I didn't believe in, and was really, now that I look back on it, was very subversive to my religion. I think what made that harder was that they never really explained it to me. It was just something I was supposed to do. So they were never like, we do this custom because of this. They were just like, we do this, so you have to do this. And I just struggled with, like, especially I remember like having to go to the mosque, which is like their equivalent of church, and praying. I remember like feeling like I was betraying God because I was praying to a God that I knew didn't exist. I knew didn't have power even at that young age. And I just knew that I was really kind of like cheating on God, really. And so it was hard. I remember talking to my mom about it a lot, and she would just kind of say that pray to God in your heart when you do that. But still, I felt like I felt like I knew what I knew what I was doing was wrong, but I still had to do it, which was just a very, very conflicting experience. And there was also the element of, since he lived on the farm too, they would often like ceremonially sacrifice goats, and he wouldn't force me to take part in it, but he would force me to like watch it or like help clean up, especially as I got older, and he felt like that was more my role. And even though that was a very traumatic part of my life, just dealing with that, I really think it forged like who I want to be, especially as I've reflected on that and I've really like looked within myself on how my dad was and how I don't want to be. It's shown me who I don't want to be, and it's formed what kind of like man I want to be, what kind of husband I want to be one day, and what kind of father I want to be one day. Because I know like it's really forced me to like grow up and like mature and realize that like when you don't mature and when you just do things passively, like that's what you do, you end up hurting other people and focusing more on yourself. And my mom and my grandmother have really been integral in kind of helping me shape my emotions in that way and helping me become aware with that. So I'm very blessed that God has put them in my life to do that. And God also used that time to really strengthen my faith in him, because there were times when I was like, God, why do I have to do this? And God, is this going to be okay? And it just showed me that God is faithful, and that at the end of that, I ended up, when I was 13, my dad had skipped like court mandated counseling for the two of us for a while. So the court told me it was my decision whether I wanted to visit him anymore or not. And so shortly after that, a couple months, I met with my dad, told him I didn't want to visit with him anymore. And I think it's been about 7 years since we talked. So we haven't talked since then. So God was faithful, and he like delivered me out of that. And not only did he deliver me out of that, but he used that experience to forge like my worldview. And I think he's really helped me become more caring, more loving, and more like altruistic than most people are, because I always, having known what it feels like to make other people, be forced to make other people happy, I try to make sure that I don't force other people to make me happy, if that makes sense, and let people live their own life. So with all that, and with the big religious conflict, especially with me being so young, it was even more so important for my mom that I grew up with a Christian influence and strong Christian values. So she enrolled me in Christian school, and I went to Christian school from preschool to first grade, was baptized in first grade, and gave my life to Jesus, even though I don't think, like, I knew in my heart what that meant, but I don't think I fully understood that to the point that I should have. And I didn't really like the whole aspect of Christian school, just how it was religious, but I feel like I didn't get as much of a connection with God, which my experiences with my dad gave me, because I had to have like that personal connection, that spiritual intuition, which he has gifted me with like my whole life, to be like, I know this is wrong, and how do I sort through that part that's wrong and come to what's right? And I really developed a relationship with him when I had to rely on him on those times when I was visiting my dad. And I didn't have that support emotionally, spiritually, or any other way. And even though I don't think I underpinned that as well as I should have with like prayer and scripture and those things that are necessary to really get to know God better, I don't think they were as much a part of my life as they should have been. And definitely weren't a part of my life because I loved to do it, which I think is so necessary. With God, it was because I felt like I had to, with like Christian school and things like that. And then, yeah, as I got older, I started to pray more and things like that. But I feel like probably around like high school age, like I would pray and I would read scripture, but I don't think I did it very maturely. I think I read scripture because I felt I had to, and I think I prayed more to God as like a counselor or like giving him a to-do list than actually asking him to examine my heart, if that makes sense. So like I think I was like, God, if you could do this, this, and this real quick, I would really appreciate it. Instead of like interceding for other people and being like, this person really needs this in their life. Can you give them that? Or God, will you examine my heart and show me where I'm making a mistake and how I can love you better? And thanking him for like all the wonderful things he does for me. So it was really hard to kind of have Jesus in my heart in a way, but like I wasn't really living that out. And I don't think I really did fully live that out until the semester after my senior year of high school. I feel like God really revealed and removed a really important idol in my life that helped me follow him better. So it was in that semester where that semester right after high school, I was in a season of uncertainty and really trusting God, really leaning on him. And I remember walking out of church one day. I was going to Bible study with my mom after church at the time, to her Bible study. And my friend Chris, who's my youth pastor, was like, "Hey, Toby." And then we started talking. He was like, "So we're thinking about starting a college-age Bible study. Just to let you know." And I think he was even like, if you know anybody, just kind of keep that in the back of your mind and maybe they can come. And I remember walking away from that conversation where I was like really convicted. Like I was like, yeah, I should do that. And I was like, that's something that I really think I should do. It would help me grow. Because I remember like in my mom's Bible study, I would never talk. I just kind of sat there and listened. And I remember doing that and thinking of how I should. But there was obviously like the parts of the devil kind of sneaking in and being like, you shouldn't do that. And like, there's so many better things you can do with your time. So that kind of went to the back of my head. Lived the next week. Same thing happened next week. I went to talk to Chris and he kind of talked to me about the whole Bible study idea and was sort of fleshing it out a little more. And I was nodding along, being like, okay, that sounds good. That sounds good. And then this is kind of funny how it happens. I always laugh about it. He goes, so we were looking for someone to lead it. And I was like, okay, cool. And thought he might run some ideas by me. And he goes, and we were thinking you were going to lead it. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I guess I am going to be going to this Bible study. So that really challenged me. And I remember walking away from that and like praying that night. And because I had built up a little more of a prayer life at that point, and I was just like, God, I was like, I don't think I can do this. And I was like, I don't think I should do this. I don't think, with all I've been through and all my past, I was like, and having been so far away from you, I was like, I don't think I am qualified to do this. And there are so many better people that could do this. And I really felt God give me this phrase, which I love, of God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. And sometimes, just like Peter does, you have to step out of the boat into the storm and just trust Jesus. So I ended up, I think it was like the next week, maybe 2 weeks later, when I ended up telling Chris, I was like, yes, I'll do this. I will lead the Bible study. And then I just really started chasing after God more, because I realized at that point that it wasn't just about me and that it wasn't just about my relationship with Jesus, but that I wanted to teach other people about Jesus, I had to know him, and that I wanted to know him because God was working on my heart at that time to really build up that fiery like passion for him. And I think it's really great now because not only has God filled my heart with like love for him and passion for him, but I have so many friends both at UMW and also like at my home church and all throughout my life that we don't only love God, but we love each other and chase after God with him. And I think it's what I really love about that and is so mind-boggling is that, especially with my friends at University of Mary Washington, if my life had gone according to my plan instead of God's plan, like we never would have met. And there are so many great people in relationships that I wouldn't have the privilege of having in my life. And that experience just showed me a lot about God's nature, I guess, and a lot about how we focus so much on our abilities instead of God's abilities. And that he really worked with me, and that is one of the things I think is beautiful about God, is he's very patient and he works with you. He doesn't just force you to make a decision quickly, because it took me from first grade till 12th grade, so 11 years, to really fully appreciate, or to reach the level of appreciation I am at now with God. Obviously, you'll never fully appreciate God, and appreciating God is a lifetime journey. It's not just it's not a destination. Yeah, and so, like I was saying about God's plan and not my plan, basically, I think from a very young age, it was very evident to like my family and I that God had just gifted me with a lot of intelligence and a lot of natural ability. And my mom did a wonderful job of fostering that. From a very young age, she read to me and talked to me like from the day I was brought home. And I think it's one of the reasons I do have that intelligence and that ability to communicate. And it was something that was always fun to me, I think. I always enjoyed learning. I still enjoy learning. And just enjoyed figuring things out. So I think school was something that was always really fun to me. It was always like a really good challenge. I'm a type 8 on the Enneagram, so I'm a challenger. So I absolutely love anything that can really make my mind work, especially history classes. Those were my favorite in school because I loved history. But that kind of changed in 10th grade. I think there were just a lot of factors where I kind of just started getting like bored in school and felt like I wasn't using my intelligence for the better. Because one of my favorite quotes about this is, with great power comes great responsibility. Because I think because God gave me such tremendous intelligence and ability, I've always felt an equally tremendous pull to use that to help others. And to not just hoard it for myself, because that feels so selfish. Like, God gives us gifts to serve others. And it's a joy and an honor to serve others. And it just feels wrong to keep that and hold that in. And I think there was just a point where school kind of became like, it wasn't that. School became sort of like jumping through hoops, and like I wasn't using my skills to better society, but I was just kind of bettering myself. So I really struggled with that for a while. I even considered leaving high school and going to college early. And my mom and I had a lot of honest discussions and open discussions about how I was feeling and what I really wanted to do in life. And that's something that I really appreciate about my mom and our relationship, is that we have such an open relationship, an honest relationship, where we can literally talk about anything. Like, there's this one time I remember where I came home from school. I think it was like junior year. And I don't think there was anything that specifically had happened. I was just feeling really like unproductive and like I wasn't contributing to anything. And she and I were talking or something. I think must have been about 18 at the time. So I was 18, I think, looking forward to like my 19th birthday. And I was just like, Mom. And I think I said this in like a very frustrated tone, which is unusual for me. And I was like, Mom, I was like, Mozart wrote his first symphony at 19. Madison got his PhD from Princeton at 19. I was like, and I'm just kind of twiddling my thumbs in high school. And she just kind of gave me this look like, why do I have a 19-year-old that thinks that? like she was completely understanding and loving, but it's just a mind-boggling thing of like that is not something most people have to deal with. And we just really prayed about it and talked about it for a while of like, God, what do you want me to do? Like, do you want me to step out in faith and leave high school, or do you want me to stay? So I really struggled with that for a bit, of just feeling unproductive and feeling like I wasn't really doing anything with my life. I was kind of just wasting it. And then my grandfather suggested that I should look into archaeology as a career, because I was in love with history. I didn't want to have a job that would stick me behind a desk all day, which is kind of funny being an economist now. But at the time, I was determined that I was not going to work inside, because I didn't want to do that. And my grandfather was like, archaeology would be good. He had an old friend in the field, thought it would be a great thing for me. So I did some research, dove into it, loved the idea. I got the opportunity through my school to do field school at not field school at James Madison's Montpelier, but like a week-long program. So I went and dug and really loved it, fell in love with it. And that helped, I think, me see purpose in school, because I was working for something. I was working for a career. So that helped me have vision. And there were a couple other things in my life at the time that I really gave a purpose and a vision to school, because I'm someone who's very vision driven, and I need to be working for something bigger, I think, than myself. So yeah, that helped for a while. Fast forward to senior year, I eagerly put in applications to 7 colleges, and all of which were really good schools, and schools that I really loved. And I was probably a little bit too hopeful, if that makes sense, and not practical enough, but I think we all are a little bit at that age. And so I ended up only getting into one of those. I ended up only getting into my backup school. I was waitlisted at another school. And that was like really hard for me, because I'd always been told and always believed that I could do anything. Like I could conquer the world. And I think that was just hard to know that sometimes you're going to fail and sometimes you're going to mess up. That's a whole nother lesson that God taught me and life taught me. And it's a good one, and one I think everyone should learn, but I'll talk about that another time. So it was really hard in that time of like accepting that defeat and that setback. But I tried as much as I could to focus on the positive, focus on that I got into a great school, that I'd gotten into their honors program, and that I'd also gotten into field school at James Madison's Montpelier, which you usually don't get into until like your junior year of college. So I tried to focus on that, enjoy the rest of my senior year, and hang out with my friends. Graduated, went off to field school, which was an amazing experience. It was great, fun, a lot of camaraderie, made a lot of memories, and it was just a great experience overall. But during that time, I realized that as fun as field work was, and like digging up artifacts, things like that, that the education side of it, I wasn't going to be as into. Because earlier I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to go get my master's, I'm going to get my PhD, that'll be fun. But field school kind of showed me the realities of that side of it, of that's a lot of time, that's a lot of money, and well, it's a lot of time in a classroom, which I didn't really like. It's a lot of money, and it's also would mean time away doing that work, time away from my family that I wanted to have one day. So I kind of started questioning, was that a good idea? Was that really the path for my life? Because in my mind, I figured it's better to figure that out before I go into college than after I go into college, or after I have my degree, which I've seen a lot of people do. So that was challenging. And then I think it's about 5 weeks after field school, about a month before I was supposed to go to college. My grandfather on my mother's side was hospitalized for the second time in like a couple months with COPD. And it very quickly became obvious that like he wasn't doing well, and that he was going to take a turn for the worse. So we went and saw him for the last time, talked to him. We were able to say goodbye, which was really good, was a blessing, that was supposed to happen and that it didn't happen quickly. But that was just something that had a very profound impact on me. It was my first real experience with death. It was, and I think it was just something I'll never forget. Like the first time you come to terms with that. And just looking into the eyes of someone who knows they're gonna die is just something I think that changed me forever. Because I think one of the realizations I had is that, like, as I was wrestling with my education, that whole thing, is that, like, whether I dropped out of college or whether I was a Harvard PhD, I was still gonna die. I was still gonna end up like that. And that no matter what you achieve, no matter what you do, you can't escape death. And that it's just a reality. And that I think one of the things I pulled away from that is that I wanted to live each day like it was my last, because it's so easy to live passively and to be like, that will happen one day. And that's something that happens, I think, with Christianity, especially a lot of, I'll accept Jesus one day, I'll get my life together one day. But something that just really put in my heart was that you have to live each day like it could be your last, because it could be. And so that's just something I've always tried to do it to a certain degree, but certainly since that experience, I've done that. And it just shows you how fleeting time is, I think, and how short life really is, and how you have to go after what God wants you to go after, not what you want to go after. So I would say that was one of the most profound moments in my life, even though it was a very brief moment, even though he and I weren't super close, because my grandmother had gotten divorced and remarried. It was still just an experience that was hard. And as I realized as my paradigm of like life and achievement and reality were kind of turned on their head, I really started looking at, was the college I had picked the best for me, or was it the one that was going to like serve me the best, if that makes sense? And I just felt that school was a good school, and it was a nice school. I would have done well at it, but I didn't think that, with me realizing how short life was, I wanted to spend 4 years on an honors degree. And I decided that if I stayed in state, I could save a lot of money, and I could also save like 1.5 years of my life. So, in a move that was absolutely, completely opposite of my planned personality, I unenrolled from that school about 2 or 3 weeks before I was supposed to move in, and just kind of stepped out in faith, which was really hard to do, because I think we all like that certainty a little bit, but especially me being planned, I like to know what's going on. So the fact that I went from, in the span of about 3 weeks, I know exactly where I want to go, to I don't know where I'm going to go, and nothing's really on the table, was incredible, I think. And so I really kind of started searching at different colleges and sort of searched my heart of, what did I really want to do in life? And what did I want to do in life? And what did God want me to do in life? So I would think it was, it was very early. I think two weeks into like the college semester, if that. I had done some research and gotten a recommendation from a really good friend who I trust, and I ended up touring Mary Washington, University of Mary Washington. They had a good business program, which is what I was thinking about going into, and a good anthropology program, which I was still kicking around. And then my friend just said they had a really good environment, so we toured it. And it was awesome. I fell in love with the campus. The campus, just the incredible amount of like community and like the family feel, was something that I really valued and loved. And then just to cap it all off, I ran into like 5 of my good friends in like the first 3 minutes on campus. And like 3 of those friends I've known since childhood. So it was just really a great fit. And like I said, I've even grown like other relationships and better relationships. And I'm so happy that it just shows you like how much better God's plan is than our plan. Because I was, a month before that, I was happy to go where I wanted to go. But then God really put me where he wants me. And I think it shows you the beauty of yielding to God and trusting God. It's so easy to try to take control, but it's easier to let go of that. And I think through that, that's another moment really where God took a while in our time, not his time. It took a while for me to really show me that, to show me that, there are more important things. That as fun as academics are for me, as good as it is to do well in that and as important as school is, that's not where your identity should lie. That's not where my identity should lie. But he is where my identity should lie. And I think that's just a really important thing that he stripped away from me, that I had fallen in love with instead of him, if that makes sense. And that you can do well in this world and focus on him instead of on me. And one of the ideas that just really resonates with me is Dale Partridge is a pastor. And he talks about the idea of being saved from success, which I think is good. And the idea of that the first shall be last and the last shall be first. And the idea that like being saved from worldly success and falling into spiritual success. Which I think is just an idea that is so hard to swallow, but so important to come to terms with. That this life truly is God's, not ours. That we don't really have any ownership or don't have any say in what happens to our life, but that when you just give it all to him, that he'll form it into something beautiful and so much better than what we could do. And so I just, looking back on my life as I've done this, has been a great experience. And God just impressed upon me all the amazing things he's taken me through to get me to the point that I am today. And how that there were those tough times. There were those times that I turned away from him and sought what I wanted, not what he did. But he redeemed those and used those to make me a better servant of him, which I think is just something so beautiful and so wonderful. And how God constantly is just writing our story day by day, second by second, breath by breath. So yeah, I hope that this blesses you and that this really speaks to you, and maybe that God will use this to speak to you about something that you've been waiting for confirmation on, for a word on, about for a long time. So I know that I kind of just did the cliff notes of my life. These are just sort of, I left out some details just for time's sake and things like that. So certainly if you guys ever have any questions about what I said, or any more questions about my life, how God has worked in it, or even from my life, anything that you think he might have given me wisdom that would help you, please feel free to reach out and DM me. So I appreciate you guys tuning in, listening to me, and really just listening to my story. And I hope you guys have a blessed rest of your day.